It's a boring day at school, and you've got detention for insulting Mr. May's music taste. You're sad because England have just crashed out of the World Cup, and you've got nothing to do. You've got two options. You go outside and have a fun time, or you do your chemistry homework. So, you pick up your shoes, put them on, and take out your homework diary. You scan it, looking at every page. You find a page that is very interesting. It possesses a periodic table. You wonder to yourself, who made this? And why? And how it unites the three sciences. To develop your interest, you research about it at home. You go on the internet and you type it in. You press enter and scan the results. You go for Wikipedia, obviously, but you get slightly distracted. 3.5 hours later, you finally get to the finished project, and here it is. Aristotle is probably the first person that contributed to the periodic table in around 330 BC. Him being born in 384 BC. Him being depicted in the picture shown as a Greek god in bronze. His interests were in physics, poetry, and the arts like theatre and music. He always wanted to know the reason behind something, which is why he created the 5 elements in the periodic table: fire, earth, air, water, and ether. The reason behind this is because fire is hot and dry, earth is cold and dry, air is hot and wet, water is cold and wet, and ether, which is a divine substance, makes up spheres, stars, and planets. Around 2,000 years later, a man called Antoine Lavoisier put the 33 elements that they knew at the time into a list, and he distinguished between the metals and the non-metals. His work included the naming of oxygen and hydrogen, and therefore his nickname is the father of modern chemistry. His work was overshadowed in the French Revolution when he was accused of selling watered down tobacco, and he was guillotined. This, of course, was in the French capital, Paris, on the 8th of May 1790. The next contributor, Jöns Jacob Berzelius, in 1828, developed the table which included the atomic weights, and he also abbreviated the elements to letters. He was a Swedish chemist, and he also worked with John Dalton, Robert Boyle, and he used to work with Antoine Lavoisier before he died, and he was considered a father of modern chemistry. Across the sea, 1 year later, the next contributor, Johann Wolfgang de Bernier, was a German chemist, and he worked about triads, basically elements that had the same properties which are normally in threes. For example, lithium, sodium, potassium, chlorine, bromide, and iodine. And he insisted that there should be some kind of notation groups, and he wanted to push this, and he was the forerunner for this. London-born John Newlands took all the elements at the time, which was just under 60, and arranged them in atomic weights, and looked at all the similarities between the first and the 9th, the 2nd and the 10th, and so on. and he related it to music, which is where octaves came from, and he proposed the law of the octaves. He identified many similarities, and he was a forerunner for periods. Therefore, the last two, Johann de Bernoulli and John Newlands, made the periodic table, but didn't construct it together. The very competitive Lothar Meyer, a German chemist who tried and almost failed to make the first ever periodic table in 1869, was heavily in competition with the next, Dmitri Mendeleev, who is most widely renowned, as Lothar Meyer put his periodic table in properties, as in molar volume and atomic weight. However, Dmitri Mendeleev did with similar properties, but he also predicted that other elements will come, such as, which we know now, gallium, scandium and germanium. And he knew this because of the similar properties of all the other groups, and he created the modern, and Dmitri Mendeleev created the modern periodic table, which we all know now, except for group 8. The Scottish chemist William Ramsay in 1894 discovered the noble gases. He did this by taking air, removing oxygen, nitrogen, water and carbon dioxide, and was left with a gas which was 19 times heavier than hydrogen. And he didn't know what to call it, but he ended up calling it argon, and therefore he started collating all the other gases that were left, that everyone didn't know what they were, and called it overall the noble gases. And as a result, he got the Nobel Prize in 1904, and that group was added to the periodic table, which you can obviously see now in group 8, as I mentioned earlier. Henry Moseley, the English physicist, determined the atomic number for the elements, and therefore he had to modify the periodic table so that it would be in the right order. So tellurium and iodine had to be swapped around, and so did argon, potassium, cobalt and nickel. This was all in 1913, and only a year later he predicted that there are 3 more unknown elements which go between aluminium and gold, and he said that there are altogether 92 elements which go from hydrogen to uranium. Glenn Seeberg was the first American scientist and also the last contributor of the periodic table, who won the Nobel Prize in 1951. He was the co-discoverer of the 10 elements which are called the actinides, which involved names which were named after famous scientists such as Einstein, Mendeleev, which was the most renowned person for the periodic table, as explained earlier, and also element 106, which is named Seebergium, which is his name,